silence arrived without warning. One moment, the colony world of Eden was broadcasting its usual traffic. Weather reports, agricultural updates, family conversations across the comm network, 80,000 human beings living their ordinary lives. The next moment, every signal stopped. Not faded, not jammed. Stopped, as if someone had simply closed a door on an entire world. Commander Darius Cole stood on the bridge of the scout vessel, Remembrance. His uniform was worn at the sleeves. His dark hair showed streaks of gray from decades of service no one wrote about anymore. His eyes were the color of cold steel, and they had learned to see what others missed. "Again," he said. His voice was calm, quiet. The voice of a man who had learned that shouting never helped. The communications officer tried for the 10th time. Her hands moved across the console with practiced speed. "Nothing, Commander. No distress call, no emergency beacon. It's like they were never there." A young lieutenant spoke from the navigation station. "That's impossible, sir. A colony doesn't just vanish. We have to assume enemy action." Darius Cole did not answer immediately. He stared at the empty space on the main display, where Eden should have been a bright blue dot. "Show me the system," he ordered. The star chart appeared. Eden was marked by a blinking red icon now. But something else appeared on the sensors. Something that had not been there before. A shape. Massive. Silent. Motionless. "What is that?" the lieutenant asked. The sensor officer zoomed in. Her face lost all color. "It's a vessel," she whispered. Then, louder, "Commander, it's the size of a small moon. I've never seen anything like it. The energy readings alone, they're off the scale." Darius felt the temperature on the bridge drop. Not literally. But the cold that settled into his bones was real enough. Before them hung a construct that could not have been built by human hands. It was the color of old bone, pitted and scarred, as if it had traveled through something far worse than ordinary space. Strange lights pulsed along its surface, not in patterns of communication, in patterns that looked like breathing. Slow, deep, patient. "Have they detected us?" Darius asked. "I don't think so, sir," the sensor officer replied. "But if they decide to look, we won't be able to hide." Darius made his decision without hesitation. "Open a channel. First contact protocol. Friendly, clear, no aggression." The signal went out. The silence that followed was worse than any weapon fire. Every second stretched. The crew held their breath. The lights on the alien structure continued their slow, deliberate pulsing. Then, without warning, the pulses stopped, and the structure turned. Not like a ship changing course, like a creature opening its eyes. The main display flickered. Static. Then an image formed. The being that appeared was not made of flesh in any way humans understood. It seemed carved from pale stone, its features sharp and symmetrical, almost beautiful. But its eyes were completely black. No iris, no pupil. In just two empty voids that seemed to pull light toward them. It had no mouth that moved. But its voice filled the bridge anyway. Deep, resonant, without emotion. "You disturb the convergence," it said. "State your purpose." Darius stepped forward. He did not allow himself to show fear. He had learned long ago that fear was a tool, useful only if you controlled it. "We are human," he said. "We've lost contact with our colony. 80,000 people. They were here. Now they're not. Do you know what happened to them?" The being tilted its head. The movement was slow, deliberate, like a predator considering something small. "The colony," it said, "has been collected. Its inhabitants have been integrated. They now contribute to the convergence. Darius felt his chest tighten, but his voice remained steady. Collected? Integrated? Explain. Now. The being's black eyes seemed to deepen. Your species is primitive, chaotic. You fight among yourselves. You destroy your own worlds. You waste existence on meaningless noise. We offer purpose. We absorb your knowledge. Your biological distinctiveness becomes part of our perfection. Your people are not dead. They are elevated. Darius looked at the image of the creature, at the massive structure behind it, at the cold, absolute certainty in its empty eyes. You've taken 80,000 human beings, he said slowly, against their will, without communication, without negotiation. You've stolen them. The being showed no reaction. There is nothing to negotiate. Resistance is inefficient. Surrender is inevitable. Your species will join the convergence. All of you, in time. The transmission ended, and on the bridge of the remembrance, no one spoke. 42 human crew members, one small scout ship, facing something that could swallow worlds. The young lieutenant broke the silence. Commander, we can't fight that. We don't have the firepower. We don't have reinforcements. The nearest fleet is 3 days away. By the time they arrive... I know, Darius said. He turned to face his crew, men and women who had trusted him with their lives. He saw fear in their faces. He saw exhaustion. He saw something else too. Something that had kept humanity alive through every war, every collapse, every moment when extinction seemed certain. Stubbornness. They want efficiency, Darius said. They want order. They want silence. He paused. They're about to learn that humans don't give those things easily. He issued his orders, not to attack, not to flee, to send a message, not to the military, not to the politicians, to every human being who had ever written a law, signed a treaty, stood in a courtroom, and argued that justice mattered more than power. The message went out across the system, across human space, across every frequency the remembrance could reach. It was not a call for weapons. It was a summons. Hours passed. The alien structure, which called itself the Convergence, did not move. It waited. Patient. Certain. Then the reply came. Not from a general. Not from a fleet commander. From the International Court of Human Rights. The oldest institution humanity had ever built. The one that had survived every war, every revolution, every attempt to tear it down. The message was simple. We have received your communication. We have reviewed the evidence. 8 charges have been filed. On board the Convergence, the being that called itself the Archivist received the transmission. It examined the document with something approaching curiosity. Charges, it repeated. Your species seeks to put us on trial. Darius Cole appeared on the screen again. He was standing in the same place, same uniform, same cold steel eyes. But there was something different now. Something the archivist could not identify. That's correct, Darius said. You have violated interstellar law. You have committed acts of abduction, acts of forced assimilation, acts of cultural destruction. Under the statutes agreed upon by every human world, you are now subject to legal proceedings. The archivist made a sound. It might have been amusement. It might have been confusion. You have no authority over us. We command forces beyond your comprehension. We have absorbed civilizations older than your species. We are beyond your laws. Darius shook his head slowly. No, he said. You're not. You entered our space. You took our people. That puts you under our jurisdiction. That's how law works. It applies to everyone, even the powerful, especially the powerful. The archivist paused. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across its stone-carved features. "Your laws bind you," it said. "They do not bind us." "Then you don't understand what law is," Darius replied. "It's not chains we put on others. It's chains we put on ourselves. We made these rules because we know what happens without them. We've been where you are. We thought power was everything. We were wrong." The archivist studied him for a long moment, and then the transmission ended. But the archivist did not dismiss the human. Instead, it ordered its data systems to gather everything available on this species. Their history, their wars, their so-called laws. What it found disturbed it. Humans should have destroyed themselves. The records showed endless conflicts, atrocities, collapses. But after every catastrophe, they did something no other species in the archivist's memory had ever done. They built limits. They wrote documents that restrained their own leaders. They created courts that could judge the powerful. They invented rights that could not be taken away, even when it would have been easier to ignore them. They chose justice over dominance. The archivist summoned its council. The other beings of the convergence gathered in their silent, efficient way. "They weaken themselves deliberately," one said. "It is inefficiency. Pathology." Another spoke. "Or discipline. They restrain power because they know what happens when power has no limits. They've learned something we haven't." Before the argument could continue, a new transmission arrived. Darius Cole appeared once more, but this time he was not alone. Behind him stood 12 other men and women, different ages, different backgrounds, but all wearing the same insignia, the insignia of the court. "This is the formal response of humanity," Darius said. "We're sending it now." A document filled the display. Thousands of pages, centuries of legal tradition, every human right ever written, every restriction ever placed on authority, every promise that no leader, no matter how powerful, could simply take what they wanted from the powerless. The archivist read, and read, and when it finished, it understood something it had never understood before. "Your commanders cannot surrender," it said slowly. "Your laws forbid it. Even if you wanted to submit, you cannot." "That's correct," Darius said. "Kill us, and others will follow the same rules. The idea outlives any one person, any one generation, any one defeat." The archivist stared at him. "You would choose extinction over submission." Darius met its gaze. "We would choose remaining human." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then the archivist made its decision. It ordered the convergence to advance, to begin the assimilation of the human species, to prove once and for all that order always triumphed over chaos. The fleet moved, and then everything changed. Across the human systems, energy signatures ignited, thousands of them. But they were not weapons. They were not ships. They were data relays. Every vessel of the convergence received a packet simultaneously. Legal notice, charges, indictments. "What is this?" the archivist demanded. One of its officers responded, confusion in its usually emotionless voice. "It appears they have filed individual charges against every ship, every commander, every crew member. Under their law, force requires due process. They have notified us." The archivist turned back to the human commander. "You threaten us with paperwork." "No," Darius said. "We threaten you with consequences." Across the system, the human defense grid activated, but it did not fire weapons. It fired signals. Each signal contained the same thing. evidence. The convergence had absorbed dozens of species. Each absorption had been recorded. Each world's final moments had been catalogued. Every scream, every plea, every act of forced assimilation, the humans had found those records. And they were broadcasting them everywhere. To the convergence ships, to their crews, to every being who had ever believed that what they were doing was right. The archivist watched as its own vessels began to falter, not from damage, from doubt. For the first time in their existence, the beings of the convergence saw what they had done. Not as statistics, not as efficiency, as suffering. One by one, the ships stopped moving. Their crews did not surrender. They simply paused, unable to continue, unable to ignore what they had seen. "You're breaking them," the archivist said to Darius, but there was something new in its voice, something that might have been fear, or something worse. "No," Darius said. "We're showing them the truth. What they do with it is up to them." The archivist gave the order to attack anyway. A handful of ships obeyed. They fired on the human defense grid. The humans did not fire back. Instead, they sent more data, more evidence, more truth. The attacking ships stopped as suddenly as they had started. Their crews could not reconcile what they were doing with what they now knew. Within 6 hours, the convergence fleet had collapsed. Not destroyed, disabled by its own inability to continue. The archivist sat alone on its command vessel. The massive structure that had once seemed invincible now felt like a cage. A transmission came through, not from Darius Cole, from a human judge, like an elderly woman with gray hair and calm, steady eyes. "You are summoned," she said, "to appear before the court, to answer for what you have done. You have the right to present your case. You have the right to counsel. You have the right to be heard." The archivist stared at her. "And if I refuse?" "Then you refuse," she said. "But the evidence remains. The charges remain. And the beings you've absorbed, they will have their chance to speak, to tell their stories, to be heard for the first time since you silenced them." The archivist said nothing. It went. The trial lasted months. Survivors of the absorbed species came forward. Some could barely speak. Some had not spoken in generations. But they told their stories. The archivist listened. It heard about children taken from their parents, about cultures erased because they were deemed inefficient, about worlds that had screamed and been told their screams did not matter. When the verdict came, it was not annihilation. The convergence was found guilty, guilty of crimes against life, against freedom, against the right to exist. The sentence was not death. It was change. The convergence would release every being it had absorbed. It would provide reparations. It would submit to oversight. It would learn what it had spent millennia refusing to learn. That no being, no matter how powerful, has the right to silence another. The archivist stood before the court. Its stone features were unchanged, but something in its black eyes had shifted. "Why?" it asked Darius Cole, who stood nearby. "Why did you not destroy us? We would have destroyed you." Darius looked at the creature that had almost ended humanity. "Because if we became you," he said, "we would lose what makes us worth defending. We didn't survive by being the strongest. We survived by being the ones who chose to be better. Not always, not perfectly, but enough. Enough to matter." The archivist considered this. "Your laws," it said slowly, "are not chains." "No," Darius said. "They're promises. Promises we made to each other. That we would not become the monsters we fought. That power would not be the only thing that mattered. That every voice would be heard. The archivist lowered its head. For the first time in its existence, it did not have an answer. In the years that followed, the galaxy watched humanity with new eyes. They did not conquer. They did not enslave, and they did not impose their will on anyone. They built schools on worlds that had only known silence. They sent doctors to heal wounds that had festered for centuries. They opened courts where the powerless could finally speak. And one by one, the species that had feared the convergence began to understand something new. The humans had not won by being stronger. They had won by being unwilling to become what they fought. The archivist, in its final days before the sentence was carried out, asked to speak with Darius Cole one last time. "What will history say about us?" it asked. "About what we did." Darius considered the question. "It will say you were wrong," he said. "But it will also say you were given a chance to change, and that you took it. That's more than most tyrants get." The archivist nodded slowly. He said, "What will history say about you? About humanity?" Darius smiled. A tired smile. The smile of a man who had seen too much to be naive, but who had chosen hope anyway. "It will say we refused to give up," he said. "Not because we were the strongest. Because we remembered what we were fighting for. Every time. Even when it was hard, especially when it was hard." The archivist looked at him for a long moment. "I understand now," it said. "Your laws, your courts, your rights. They are not weaknesses. They are walls, built around the one thing you refuse to lose." "What's that?" Darius asked. "Your humanity," the archivist said. And for the first time in its existence, it bowed, not in defeat, in respect. The galaxy watched as law replaced fear, as rights replaced silence, and as the species that had almost destroyed itself became the one that taught others how to live. Humanity did not conquer the stars. They served them with a summons. And for the first time in the history of the universe, the darkness learned a sentence more powerful than any weapon. A sentence that echoed across every world, every species, every heart that had ever been silenced. You have rights, and no one can take them away.